All right, boys, let's talk the Jimmy trade so far. Also going to touch on Wiggins with Miami, but mostly Jimmy with the Warriors. There is a sponsor in this video. They're 3-1 with Jimmy so far, and that Dallas game they lost came down to the wire. Big charge call against Jimmy for Kyrie in that one, but in general, the vibes are pretty good, especially because Steph looks energized. Sure, they've had some injury luck. No Giannis in the Bucks game, no Fred in the Rockets game, but whatever, man, you'll take it. So yeah, for Jimmy, the number one thing for me, you see the extra physicality just all over the place, but I think it especially reflects in the fouls, where besides Kuminga, this team was just desperate to have another guy who could draw fouls at the rate that Jimmy does. I mean, you're seeing fouls drawn on like Io or Bobby Portis or AJ Green or Najee Marshall, where just Jimmy putting his head down and being Jimmy, getting physical, the whole thing. I think my favorite foul drawn that he's had so far was a three-point play on Buzelis where he got him on a switch on a screen. We'll talk the screen setting in a second. And by that I mean right now, me being me. Jimmy has screened or received a screen from a lot of guys. We got to start with Steph. Jimmy screening for Steph or slipping a screen meant for Steph and then getting open in the middle of the floor or giving himself a driving lane or just giving this team an outlet to then make another play. I think it was cool in the Bucks game because the Bucks were kind of doing, if it wasn't a zone, it was like resembling a zone at times. Jimmy get to the middle of the floor and then from there just make something happen. I thought like late in the Rockets game, they already showed how they could already start to trick teams with this because Steph ran up to screen for Jimmy and then Jimmy threw it to Draymond in the corner and then Jimmy immediately cut off of that and he got a super wide open dunk off of it. He's also screened for pods, which is then maybe not even forced like Jimmy to then attack, but it forced a switch to where then, like you could see this early on in the Bulls game, the first one, where then the Bulls are bringing extra attention over to him because they're ready to double if he gets the ball in the post, and then it becomes like Pod skipping it to Moody for a three or just, making a series of driving kicks, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to harp on the screen setting and forcing switches and how defenses react to that for the whole video, but just know that that has probably been my biggest like instant takeaway of how Jimmy wants to play and how the Warriors want to play, and they both kind of come together. I think it was also a really good sign that they ran the split action in that first game, and Jimmy immediately knew what to do. He's like, I got a screen for Steph, let's go. And he actually drew a foul on the screen. Before we get back to Jimmy and the Warriors, this video is sponsored by SeatGeek. So after the All-Star break, the Celtics have a stretch at home where they play the Cavs, the Knicks, and the Nuggets. I will keep telling myself that the Celtics have had double-digit leads in each of their games against the Cavs this year. I have to tell myself that because the Cavs are most likely going to get the 1 seed, and the Knicks are never too far away from the 2 seed, so they better win that game. And if I wanted to go to any of these games or a different NBA game or a concert or a festival or many things, then I would use SeatGeek like I have in the past, and it's always been good. And you can use my code FUNKY10 for 10% off your next order at SeatGeek, no matter how many times you've used SeatGeek in the past, whether you're a new customer or not. SeatGeek rates deals on a scale of 1 to 10, so look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. Again, no matter how many times you've used SeatGeek in the past, you can use my code FUNKY10 for 10% off your next order. You can find my link in the pinned comment as well as the description of this video. One more time, SeatGeek, FUNKY10, 10% off, good stuff. The other thing that's been really interesting is Jimmy being an outlet for backdoor cuts or entry passes from Draymond especially, where, again, it sometimes will be off of these screens where Jimmy gets position underneath the basket and then it's just Draymond, who's a great passer, just lobbing it up to Jimmy and finishing those plays. I mean, it sounds simple, but that's the beauty of having really, really good players. And it feels like there's another level they can get to with that because they've had some really nice plays with it, but they've also had a couple of turnovers where you could tell the timing wasn't perfect either, so that's cool. As far as lineups, you've seen a bit of everything. I mean, you've seen Jimmy and Draymond with Steph not out there. You've seen Jimmy as kind of like the lone big-time creator, which again might lead to some of the like two-man game he's got with pods already a little bit. Jimmy has found himself in the dunker spot sometimes as like Steph and Draymond run their two-man game. He's made skip passes out of the post. He and Steph have screened for each other off the ball. He's found Draymond in the dunker spot. He's found Quentin post for threes when he runs like a pick and roll with Draymond. Like Jimmy just fits. As far as his three-point shooting, I do think the Dallas game was the game where it felt like his lack of wanting to take threes might have affected them the most. He had a good game overall, don't get me wrong. Missed a couple shots at the rim, but overall he was really good. But you just see him like run a screen action at the top of the key and the defense kind of freaks out for a second. He's wide open, doesn't take a three, stuff like that. Still really good, but yeah. Then as far as the defense, so he has had some time on more primary ball handlers. Like he was on Kyrie for a good amount in the Dallas game. He was on Amen for a good amount in the Rockets game. Not completely for both of these games, mind you. And in the Bulls game and the Bucks game, he was more so a help guy. And in the Bucks game, he had a couple of like real crazy gambles where if he doesn't get it, his guy's wide open, but he jumps a pass meant for like Brook Lopez for a steal. As far as the on-ball defense, I mean, against Dallas, I will say, Kyrie had a three-point play on him. One play he bit on a pump fake from, Brandon Williams for a bucket. I mean, Kyrie went real crazy in that game. But, Jimmy's team defense is always going to be good. In the Rockets game, I mean, Ahmed had 4 points, and Jimmy was on him for a lot of the game. So you like that. But yeah, it's been good so far. Also, his offensive rebounding has gone kind of crazy. Now, as I say all this, the net rating of Jimmy, Steph, and Draymond is a 1.7, which, I'll be honest, the eye test looks better than that number. Maybe it's because they went down by so much early against the Bulls. Anyway, moving forward, I think my big question is how does Kuminga fit into all this? Because he's still dealing with the ankle injury that's kept him out for a while. But if I go all the way back to early January now at this point with Kuminga, yeah, you can see buckets where he's getting his one-on-ones on drives or post-ups, but also he's getting cuts and lobs from Draymond off of Draymond and Steph's two-man game, getting a lot of free throw attempts in some of those games and just being a constant threat for the rim, right? And so fitting that next to Jimmy, and of course Steve Kerr's going to mess with the lineups however he may, but having those two physically just overwhelm teams and put all that pressure on the rim, yeah, it could be really good. Of course, Kuminga's not as good or smart as Jimmy. And if Kuminga's spotting up at the three-point line and teams have to worry about Jimmy around the rim, they're going to help off of Kuminga, and, well, that could be the negative twist on it, right? It's just, do you have one too many guys who are trying to go in the same place on offense? But with Steph's gravity, Jimmy and Draymond's passing, how Kuminga's figured more out about, times to cut and all that, I think there's reason to be optimistic about it. But again, we'll see how Kerr wants to do the lineups. And for what it's worth, I mean, Kuminga, he's been okay from three this year. It's still not a lot of attempts. As far as the Warriors' place in the West, well, here's the fun part. There still isn't really any breathing room. I mean, they still have a lot of ground to cover, even if they're one game above 500 now. The Suns just seem to be going in the wrong direction here. And the Spurs have been kind of weird since the Fox trade between lineups, and it seems like Wemby's still kind of sick. Or if he's not sick, he's just tired. The Wolves just had maybe their best win of the season against OKC. Credit to Dallas, the players, man. They refuse to let this go off the rails just yet. Kyrie's been great. I don't know if they can hold it up, but credit to him. Christie's also been really good. Don't get it twisted. I think Dallas has still doomed their franchise for the foreseeable future, but Max Christie has been nice. And then you got the Kings in there just doing Kings things. So yeah, I mean, the Warriors still have a bit of a hill to climb, and we didn't even get to the top, 6 teams in the West and that whole thing. So yeah, we want to talk Wiggins on the Heat now. Miami can't score unless Hero has a big game pretty much. And that's with Bam scoring being better lately too. And in my instant reaction to this trade, I mean, I said that I thought Jimmy would be better for the Warriors than Wiggins was for them. But I was also giving Wiggins more credit than what he's been his first 2 games with the Heat. Now, he's actually got the NBA illness as well, too. He's gotten about any type of shot attempt you could imagine so far. Catch and shoots, threes off the dribble, drives, or they're running sets for him, pick and rolls, DHOs. And he's just going to have to make some more shots. Now, defensively, yeah, Davion, Wiggins, and Bam sounds good. But you got to score, so yeah. And the long-term thing for Miami here, to me, is finding a really, really good point guard. If they do, then I think they could be interesting, and you're going to have to bank on some Khalil Ware development as well. But if they do, cool. If they don't, then they're probably just going to keep floating around the, play-in or just getting in around the 5th seed. So we'll see with them. The nice stuff is, of course, Bam remains one of the better to just best floor raisers in the league. And for what it's worth, Bam has been getting buckets lately. I know the beginning to his season was kind of weird on offense. And then Hero, he's having his best season. That's good. Now, this was technically a 5-team trade, if you're really worried about this. Schroeder has played 3 games with the Pistons so far. That's cool. Jay Rich is a free agent. Somebody will pick him up. And KJ Martin has not played for the Jazz. Am I crazy? Wasn't KJ Martin, kind of good? And now he just, hasn't played and is just getting put in trades like nothing. And then tough blow for PJ Tucker, who I'm sure was looking forward to going back to Miami, but he ended up in Toronto.